Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaden and I'm going to be telling you about all 17 books I read in April. If you see this giant gap behind me, it's because I gave some of my books to my sister. So that might be, empty for the next couple months until I get those back. So that's why there's a giant gap there. The first book I read was The Whisperings, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. Joanna and her family always leave town after their father starts seeing the Whisperings, but the current town they're in may reveal the truth about them overall in their history. It was okay read. I did like how graphic and gory the story got at times, especially when it came to some of the murders told. Surprised they allowed some of it, especially since the book is YA. Climax of the book for me was meh and not that intriguing, and how they defeated our antagonist was interesting but also kind of cheesy. Like, that's the reason the Whisperings had been following them the entire time, really. Ending made me think they left it open for a sequel, but I don't know. Just an okay read that dragged for me at parts. The second book I read was Love Me Tomorrow, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. After making a wish, Emma starts getting letters from the boy who's always loved her from the future. So it's very cute. The book itself was very cute, especially the premise. The premise kind of reminded me of the movie To All the Boys I Loved Before. It is based off a series of books, but I haven't read the books. I've just seen the movies, and that's what this premise reminded me of. I was definitely rooting for one of the boys way more than the others. Plus, the ending kind of made it open-ended to who she might end up with and who was sending letters in the first place. I just hope it wasn't one of the certain boys, because that would have been so predictable, and I'm not rooting for them compared to one of the other boys. The third book I read was The Unraveling of Emlyn DuLaine, and I rated this one 3 stars. So Emlyn unravels into the world her sister unraveled to 7 years prior to find her. It was okay read. Beginning a book sucked me in, and then it began to drag for me. There were too many characters to keep track of, and there were fourth wall references to YA books, while the book itself is a YA book. Plus, there were times she was talking to herself and responding to herself out loud, which made it confusing and annoying, and even the characters were pointing out to, like, what are you doing? All the interesting races in a Naxum were interesting, and what they did within the Wizard of Oz was cool as well. Frank was adorable, and the twist with Hayden was kind of predictable. Clocked him immediately. Leaves it on a cliffhanger, but I'm not going to read more. The book also had short chapters. The fourth book I read was No Friend to This House, and I rated this one 4 stars. So this is a retelling of Medea, written by Natalie Hayes, and I really love Natalie Hayes, and I was so excited to read this book from her. Beginning kind of confused me, but as the story progressed, I saw where it was going and it got better. Jason is the asshole in every iteration story I read him in when it's talking about Jason and the Argonauts, and it did not change in this book. I did really enjoy the story. The book had a lot of different POV chapters, which I'm not usually a fan of, but it works really well for the story. Ending felt a little rushed for me, but I like where I left Medea's character, and it gave us more information I hadn't seen in other adaptations. I really enjoyed it. After that, I read Thor and Loki, Epic Tales from Marvel Mythology, and I also rated this one 4 stars. Thor and Loki tell the Avengers how Ragnarok came to be through Asgardian stories. Oh, it's a very interesting concept. Most of the stories I liked, while some of them I zoned out while reading, so I just couldn't care, or it went on too long, even though all these chapters were short. Especially in the storytelling format the book presented us. Had illustrations, but I wish there was more. How they separate Thor and Loki telling the stories and the interruptions from Avengers, I thought was well done, even though at times when the Avengers interrupted, it messed with the pacing. This story also makes you think it's gonna lead into Ragnarok, but it's more of a possible fake out of Ragnarok that leads to a cliffhanger for the next book, which kind of pissed me off because it ends with oh, they're telling you this? Well, this is actually how it happened. And it's cool, I just wasted time reading this when I could have, now I have to wait for the next book. You know, it was just kind of stupid. After that, I read Enemy of My Enemy, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. When Frank Castle is accused of killing Kingpin and a cop, Matt Murdock goes to find out what really happened. So this is the second book in the Marvel crime series. The first one is the Jessica Jones book, but you don't have to read those in order to know what's going on in this. Because it's been over a year since I read the Jessica Jones one, and that one's my favorite so far, to know what's going on in this one. Plot reminded me a lot of season 2 of Daredevil, not the Daredevil Born Again, but the OG like Netflix Marvel show. But it was also different, especially with characters, because some of the characters are alive in the show when they're dead in the book, or like vice versa. Mystery was intriguing and kept me hooked, even included a couple twists that I wasn't expecting. Matt Murdock is very consistent character-wise to him in the show. It does lead a little bit into the third book in the series, which is going to be the Luke Cages, which I am excited to read, because I believe that's supposed to come out later this year, and I'm really excited. The next one I read was The Game Changer, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So after returning home after 6 years, hockey player Ian starts a PR relationship with Baker Delilah, who is his best friend's younger sister. But what happens when those sparks start becoming real? So I really enjoyed this book, and I read from this author before, and I really love her writing. I finished in less than a day. Really liked Ian and Delilah's relationship arc throughout the book and how it developed. No third act breakup, which is great. Great sex scenes, but at times I felt like they were going to lead to another, and then it would cut to a new paragraph or the next chapter, and you're like, well, I wanted to see that. Guess I'm not seeing that. It happened a lot, which is kind of annoying. Also, Delilah talks about how big her tits are, like page 2. So that was like startling. I liked this book a lot more than I thought I would, and I had a really fun time reading it. The next book I read after that was Project Hail Mary, and I rated this one 4.5 stars as well. So after waking up on a spaceship with amnesia, Ryland Grace finds out he's there to try to save Earth. So I wanted to read this book after seeing all the TikToks about it, TikToks about the movie, and I'm like, I should read the book, and the book was so freaking good. Very fast read too. How present day Grace and flashback Grace was told, I thought was really well done and well integrated. Flashbacks didn't feel out of place and gave the reader more detail about who Grace was before he got in the spaceship and who he is now. I really enjoyed Grace as a character and loved Rocky. Some of the science was interesting, while some of it I zoned out because I didn't understand what was going on. Great plot that kept me hooked. Last chapter felt rushed for me, but overall I really enjoyed it. After that, I read The Shots You Take, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. When Riley's dad dies, Riley's old teammate and friends with benefits, Adam comes into town to help Riley and talk to him after not seeing him for 12 years. So I had been wanting to read this book since this was the last of Rachel Reed's books that I hadn't read. And so I'm like, great, I'll read this one. All her other ones I really like. And then I read this one, and this one's my least favorite. The first half is just Adam and Riley just being assholes to each other because of, what they had, like their past with each other and them being scared. And it made me not really like any of them for a good portion. Once they reconcile, the second half is much better, and they're trying to figure out if they can make it as a couple. But like that first half, they were just being asses to each other. So I'm like, why am I rooting for you? Like, once they do, it's better, but it's like, like, once they're a couple, I am rooting for them, but it took a good portion of the book for me to do that. Sex scenes were kind of breezed by until, like, the second half, but then there's not a lot. I wish this book was better. It was a fast read, though. The next book I read was Want to Know a Secret, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. So when stay-at-home mom and baker April starts getting text messages threatening to spill her secrets, she goes after who she thinks is behind it. So this is a Freida McFadden book. I finished it in only a few hours, which I usually do with her books because, like, I read them like that. They're so fast. Book sucked me in and kept me intrigued. I liked the dual perspective, even though the second perspective, character-wise, was kind of predictable. Unreliable narrator was well done. Whodunit at the end, I wasn't expecting. It was great, even though it was kind of bittersweet for the motive. Wish April got more of a comeuppance at the end, to solidify her end for me. Overall, I really enjoyed myself while reading this book. Next book I read after that was Game On, and I rated this one for 4.5 stars. So when Stella's brother gambles his inheritance away, Stella takes on his debt and is blackmailed by the owner of the club, Tyler, to help him get revenge. So this is the third book in the Darkness series. This book is very enemies to lovers. I enjoyed this book a lot. This might be my first or my second favorite in the series. I don't know if I want to put this one first or Lights Out, but this one was really, really, really good. I do like how most of the book they were enemies before they lovers, and then at the end it's just like they're working on what they could be as a couple. Awesome sex scenes, especially in the later half with AJ and what Tyler realizes about himself, like that chapter. Oh, that was so freaking good. I really enjoyed Tyler's character growth throughout the book, especially when it comes to his mom at the end. I really liked how the perceptions that both Tyler and Stella have about each other aren't who they really are, and they based off their circumstances, that's why they're perceived that way. But once the characters get to know each other, they realize, oh, that's not who you really are, and they begin to understand each other more as people, as enemies, and eventually lovers. I wish we got more about Stella as a tattoo artist. This is the second book where I've read about a tattoo artist, and the person doesn't do very much tattooing. If I had a nickel for every time there was a tattoo I read about a tattoo artist, and they don't do much tattooing in the book, I've had 2 nickels. Come on, I want to read more about the tattooing. Especially since I find that very fascinating, and I have a couple tattoos, and it'd be nice to see a tattoo artist represented. This book also has really cool stained edges, and I really enjoyed it. After that, I read Battle of the Bookstores, and I rated this one 4 stars. When rival bookstore owners Ryan and Josie are pit against each other to become the one true manager, they find that they may have more things in common than they think. Also, they are unknowingly talking to each other on a book app. It's a cute book, enemies to lovers. It's very much a modern take on the movie You've Got Mail. I haven't seen the movie, but I know the premise, and this is very much like that. Both Ryan and Josie go on good character arcs throughout, and I liked that Ryan fell first. Book made it seem like it was going to be a third act breakup, but it worked out. Also like how when Josie finds out the truth, and it immediately goes to a sex scene. No breakup there. Also good sex scenes, and I like that Ryan is a giver. After that, I read Mile High, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. Evan Sanders is a hockey player, while Stevie Shea is a flight attendant on his team's plane, but what happens when the hate they have for each other turns to love? So this is the first book in the Windy City series, and I enjoyed it a lot. As the book progressed, their relationship reminded me of it was a little friends with benefits. They stopped hating each other and started loving each other instead. How they both deal with their mommy issues, I thought was well done and made sense for the characters. There is a third act breakup, which happens, that I'm not a fan of, and then the story started to drag before they got back together, in my opinion. I might read more of this series if my library has the rest of the books, because right now they just have the first one. This book also had blue stained edges, good sex scenes, and you would think with the title Mile High they would have sex in the sky. You would think okay, they're gonna have sex on a plane, right? No, they only do it in the last chapter, and even that chapter is a bonus chapter. So if you just took out that bonus chapter, there would be no sex in the sky. So I'm just letting you know that if you're thinking there's gonna be sex in the sky in this, no, it's not until the last bonus chapter. So I'm just letting you know. After that, I read Dealing with a Desperate Demon, and I read this one 2.75 stars. So Jack is a demon who needs Nancy's help, who's a witch, and he needs help learning how to be a boyfriend to break his curse. So this is the second book in a series, but you don't have to read the first one to know what's going on in this one. But I did not like this book. I just found Nancy really stupid. Like, I could figure out things faster than she did, or like things were getting off red flags and she didn't notice until later. Especially when Jack was acting off in the beginning. Like, she should have seen so many red flags. Like, he'll talk about something, blah, 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 human object. Like, it's like, oh, a human TV or a human car or something like that. Like, that's kind of odd, you would think. Or like when he's talking, he said something, it's like, oh yeah, the first time I flushed a toilet, it like came right off the wall. Like, what do you mean it came off the wall? Like, she doesn't even ask the question after that. That would have been my first. And like, what do you mean it came off the wall? And like, he has no idea what a hug is. And so like these little things, you'd think they'd be adding up and she'd be asking a question about. No, she only like finds out about it when like he transforms later, and then she's like, oh, you idiot. Also, like, Jack calls Nancy kid in the beginning, and like they do become love interests. But if you're calling me kid in the beginning, I'm not attracted to that. Um, and like I'm gonna perceive that you think me as a kid and not as a love interest. So it just gave me the ick. Like, no, that's not. Don't call me kid if I'm like your love interest. Icky. Icky, icky, icky. Nancy's tool for her witchiness I thought was a cool idea. And the talking familiar, though I wish there was more of him. Ending is pretty abrupt and just ends. Plus, there's the twist with his curse, which was stupid, especially since I thought it was going to be something else based off the book synopsis. Like, the book synopsis itself made it seem like, oh, Nancy's a witch, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, yeah, Jack is a demon who needs to know how to be his good boyfriend, because he's cursed, and like he has to learn how to do this for this future, like betrothed that he's like, sort of engaged to, but because of the curse he's mixed into, and it's supposed to be like a Beauty and the Beast thing. And I was like, oh, cool, that's really cool. Like, he's with Nancy, he'll learn how to be a better like boyfriend, and then he has to go be with this other chick, but then like he'll come back to Nancy. No, there's a twist with it, and it's like it leads back to Nancy at the end, and it's like, it's so stupid. You made me think it was gonna be this really cool idea, and then you're like, JK, it's not that. It's just it pissed me off so freaking much. Urgh. And so because of that, I'm not reading the first book on this series. Just no. After that, I read How My Neighbor Stole Christmas, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So when Aunt Sandy breaks her hip, her great niece Story shows up and takes her place for the annual Christmas Kringle competition. When Cindy's neighbor Cole here says he decides to join the competition, and beat Story, but what happens when these two start working together and not against one another? So I had a really fun time reading this book. Got me in the Christmas spirit, even though it's middle of April. Really like the characters and their arcs they go through as the book progresses. Book made me laugh and giggle a few times, especially when it came to Cole's reactions to things. Narrator was good, along with the fourth wall breaking. It wasn't that annoying. I thought it was really well done. Good sex scenes as well. Candy cane wasn't going where I thought it was going to go, because the audio book, like a certain line from the audiobook, went viral when this book came out. And so I thought, based off where the audio was going and how the audio was playing, I thought it was going to go somewhere. The candy cane did not go somewhere, which, like, good for it, because that would not be good for the ecosystem of that. Taryn's character, I have mixed feelings about, especially when she does to Cole. Because of what she does to Cole, there's the third act breakup, and I wished Cole apologized for blaming Story for it. He doesn't apologize, they end up together at the end, but I would have liked an apology, especially since he like yelled at her about it. Like, he finds out the truth, but I still would have liked an apology. And it was also pretty rushed, especially the last 5 pages, but they were good illustrations. I wish there was more. The second to last book I read was I Don't Wish You Well, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. While coming home from college for the summer, Price sees the killer who murdered 4 students 5 years prior might be innocent and decides to investigate. So I really enjoyed this book. This book is labeled YA, but at times it didn't feel like it, and it totally could have been an adult book, and you really wouldn't know the difference. So many twists and turns that I never expected that kept me intrigued and wanting more. Integration of different media, like audio transcripts, newspapers, interviews, etc., worked really well with the story being told. Whodunit felt kind of cheap. Like, it made sense why the character did it, and it progresses Price's character, but it just went with like a stereotype I personally didn't like. And then the last book, the 17th book I read in April, was How Girls Are Made, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. So 3 different teenage girl POVs going through a sex education club, toxic boyfriends, and the internet that eventually lead to one of them dying. So I really liked and enjoyed this book. I liked our 3 main characters, Shelby, Fallon, and Joby, and how their POVs happen together, like the POVs happened at the same time or they all happened separately. I did accidentally spoil myself one of the girls who did not die as I was trying to figure out how many pages this book had. So I knew, like, while I was reading that, this certain girl didn't die, but I didn't know which of them did die. And when I did find out, I was still really surprised. Many times I wanted to yell at Shelby and Joby, especially the latter, for their decisions, but it made sense for the characters why they were doing it, which is especially at Joby. I'm like, girl, no! I just want to yell at her so bad and just hold her and like, ah! Really fast read though. That kept me surprised until the very end, and even then I couldn't believe it. The character that dies, their death, I was like, this is how they go out. But then once they die, we find out more, and it's like, okay, made sense. But I didn't really like the way they died. So those are all 17 books I read in April. If you have any recommendations for me, let me know down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next month. Bye.